Hello, welcome to the first ADE TicketSwap podcast of 2024. I'm Joe Muggs. I'll be with you for a variety of these. And we're starting by jumping in the deep end, talking about adversity in the industry, which I'm sure will lead to some hairy tales. I'm joined by Esmée Bosklopper and Niels Voorbach, who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. So, Esmée, tell me a bit about where you work and what is your kind of day-to-day role? What keeps you busy?
So, hello everybody. But I have my own PR agency, and we work with a bunch of artists, festivals, clubs. And I've been doing that now for 4 years. I used to work at a different PR agency where I learned the trade, working with names like Martin Garrix, David Guetta, The Blessed Madonna, and a bunch of others. And after a couple of years, I thought hey, I want to start freelancing. And that freelancing led to working with a bunch of people. And now we're here. Yeah, we actually also work with Niels, with one of his artists, which is,
Yeah.
Cool. And Niels?
Yeah, I'm a strategic artist manager. I work with artists like Colin, May Salome, Collet, Cher, and Besverda. I do this now for around 6 years. That's what I do on a daily basis, and it brings all kinds of challenges, which we will definitely talk about today.
Yeah. PR.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, you have to promote records, you have to promote shows, you have to let people know about them, but you are also called in when there is adversity happening.
Definitely. It's really interesting because most of the time we work in a very uplifting, happy, music industry. It's always fun. Everybody is we're going to go out, party, listen to music. But, on the other end, there's also a lot of situations that we kind of have to manage if it's not going well. Can I throw in one example already?
Please.
So 2 weeks ago, we had a promoter that we work with, and they announced a all night long with a certain DJ, and after they announced it, they got all of these comments but this guy is hooking up with underage girls. You shouldn't give him a stage. And then that's something how do we manage that? We didn't the promoter didn't know, wasn't aware of his private things.
Wow, yeah.
So that's then some sort of PR crisis. How can we manage that? Are we able as a promoter, not guilty until proven, right? So how do we manage that, and what do we do, and what can we say about this? And the first thing that we did was have a conversation with the artist, hey, tell us, is this true? Can we do something about it? Is it somebody who's trying to, I don't know, doesn't like you or want to do something bad? Are these bots, underneath the comment section of the post that went up online? You have to figure some stuff out, and then kind of together with the client that we work with, hey, what can we do? That's some sort of a PR crisis, definitely.
Yeah. The whole industry is we've had it thrown into relief by everyone's reeling this week from the passing of Jack Master, and it's brought back all those memories of, his crisis, the kind of the difference between perception and reality, the mental health, drugs, all of those things that affect people within the industry. Niels, you work with Jack, I believe.
I didn't work with him personally. My partner, Lex, was a close friend, at least a good relation with him. I'm not fully aware about what happened in 2018, but the good thing is that he was very open about it after that, and I think that changed a lot. For me personally, we didn't have these kind of scandals yet with our artists, and I hope it stays like that.
Oh, I hope so too.
Otherwise, I call Esmée immediately. She's on the hotline. But so far, so good.
Mm-hmm. So what about a more day-to-day adversity? Like, what are the kind of, the low-level irritating struggles that you have to deal with? I mean, let's map out the kind of, the highs and lows here.
Well, the biggest challenge for touring artists is obviously the travel. So that brings a lot of frustration, delayed flights, stuff that isn't going the way they planned it. Colin, for an example, he has a very heavy touring schedule. And sometimes he's not home for 2 months in a row, for example. And if your flight gets delayed and you even miss those 2 important days at home, that can be very challenging also for us to keep him going, to keep him positive as well. And he is dealing with that in a good way, but it's not always easy.
Because, with these crisis situations, and we could all mention, many DJs and artists who've crashed and burned. We sort of say, we have greater awareness of mental health. We have greater awareness of the struggles that people go through. But what does that mean day to day? What do you actually have to do to improve someone's well-being and stop them kind of, heading down the wrong paths?
I think thinking ahead, what kind of hours of sleep are you able to get to really manage pickups well, hotels, check-ins, stuff like that. Everything that makes touring a bit easier helps a lot. It makes a big impact. So we try to work with specialists in their own field, travel specialists. Eva travels with his girlfriend. She's doing a great job as a tour manager as well. So that all helps. And that is stuff that is actually quite important to do that well.
And also have conversations, right? Like, how are you feeling? What's on your mind? And not just keep going and going and going.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it presumably it differs from every single person. You have to know the person. Right?
Well, some people are more stable than others, obviously. But we also, when we start working with an artist, we also look into that. So because also for us to keep our sanity as well, that enables us to do our job well. So we also select the artist a little bit and see, hey, how are you dealing with stress? How are you dealing with touring? Because in the end, when they get bigger, this is super important. So personality is also something that we really look at when we start working with an artist.
Because, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed a lot over the years is that a lot of the worst problems come when there's a big machine and it expects the artists to be cookie cutter. It thinks that a DJ is an interchangeable item that can be slotted in and out, right?
Yeah. I think also those first years that their success, I know you guys had it with Colin, right? Every, step was a win, like, oh my, what's happening? And then at a certain point, you have to kind of keep to a certain level, and that's where the pressure comes in. And I think if you have a fun group of people around you that you really enjoy working with, it already feels lighter. I have that feeling. I don't know if you agree, but...
Absolutely, I do agree. I think that's super important. And with the travel and the intense touring, a lot of shows also comes challenging with finding the time to produce new music, keeping up. It's all challenging, and
I mean, young artists think they're invincible. They're on the up and up, and they're like, I can do a show, and I've made 3 tracks on the plane, and now I'm landing. And I mean, do you have to prepare people for the fact that energy level can't be sustained?
100%. Yeah, that's wait till you tour the world, and it will change. Yeah, and then you have to find the right balance.
I mean, I guess I sort of came through in the 90s rave era, and then as I was becoming a journalist, I watched the dubstep generation come through from youth, from teenage. So I watched the entire trajectory, and it was quite interesting seeing that explode, and then like those same set of expectations be dealt with. With PR, how do you reconcile the fact that you are having to present a positive
like a lot of artists dislike doing interviews, just to be honest. Like they're like some of them are really good at it, there are some people that really thrive talking about whatever they do and how they do it. But most of them just want to spend time on stage and in the studio. Like that's like what they do.
A lot of them got into music because they might not be verbal people. They might express themselves through music, right?
And then you have to talk about what you do and how you do it and kind of sell yourself sometimes as well, because still, you know, it's people that we work with, but they're brands. Like most of these artists are brands. So they sell tickets. They, you know, there's a whole team sometimes working, you know, with them. That's a big responsibility sometimes for a guy who's like mid-20 or like early 20. And, you know, you have to kind of make sure that everybody, you know, gets paid in a way. Like, so I think what I try to do together with my team is to make them feel as comfortable as possible. And if they don't want to do it, we're not going to do it. And obviously we'll, you know, start with the strategy and, you know, have things written down that we want to work towards. But if they're not feeling well and they don't want to do it, then I'm completely fine with it, because it's their career. It's not for me to kind of, you know, oh, hey, we're at Celjon and we do this, this, and this. It's about them. And I just want to make sure that they are, you know, visible at, you know, the right, you know, media outlets. And sometimes if that can be via a different way that doesn't involve them having to talk to a journalist, but just sending out a press release or sending out, you know, footage of them playing, you know, the media landscape is also changing a bit. So I think what we mostly do is really work well together with management, be an extension of management, and really connect with the managers to kind of discuss like, hey, what can we do on tour? Is it too much? Or should we, you know, wait until like AD or Miami Music Week, do like key moments throughout the year? And, you know, whenever the artist is on tour for the rest of the year, we don't do anything. Like, it's something that you discuss and something that you talk about and just make sure that everybody's happy and we get the best results at the same time.
Again, it's about avoiding the cookie cutter approach, right? Because you have to know who needs a wall of protection around them, who needs the other kind of protection to stop them saying too much.
As well. Yeah. But I think also, especially if you're new to the industry, you know, you learn by doing it. So it's also fine if you make a mistake. Sometimes we're all, you know, just human beings and also artists. Obviously, at a certain point, it's, you know, the stakes are getting higher, the pressure is getting higher. And I think that's where it's like interesting. Well, you know this as well, Niels, like I worked with Maupi for 2 years in the beginning of his, you know, Maupi era. And the stakes just got higher and higher, and also the pressure. Yeah, that's interesting.
But that pressure comes from above as well. There are financial interests. There are investors.
There's a lot of politics.
The record company, and they want you to say it's all going to be great.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the person who has to say it's all going to be great, right?
Yeah, it's always great. No, but that's also a thing in PR. You know, I think honesty, and maybe that's the Dutch way, but like being honest and upfront about things, that works best. You know, you can tell people like, oh, it's going to be amazing, or you're going to be in that magazine, or people are going to be there. And like, if it doesn't work out, you know, so I'm always, Niels knows this, like, I'm always honest, like, think we can do this or not. Like and obviously, I think the same way you, Niels, like kind of select the people you want to work with, we do that on a PR front as well. Like, that's why I switched from the company that I used to work at. I had to work with a certain, you know, amount of artists. And when I started my own company, I could choose, like, okay, this is somebody that I have a connection with. This is somebody that I really, really believe in and that I think that I can make a difference. Yeah. And that's, you know, PR is not measurable, not really. So it's
you want to make an impact, then and you can only make an impact if you have a positive feeling yourself about a person or a company, and that is also how we look at that. Yeah.
But how do you select? I mean, there are things you can't select in terms of the teams that come and go, especially in big record labels. You know, it's a great thing for bands and artists to find that suddenly the A&R they've been working with for 15 years is just gone.
Yeah.
You know, how do you manage upwards, as it were? How do you manage expectations when it comes to pressure from above?
Yeah, we work directly with the artists, so we don't have a lot of pressure from anyone else. It's just us working on a day-to-day basis with the artists. So, but obviously we also work with big labels, and they expect new music from us. So those are there are always challenges. But yeah, we don't get a lot of pressure from people. We just try to move forward and get the career to the next level.
So do you think that's an advantage that the dance music industry has, that we have these kind of, I think it was Robert Fripp who coined the phrase in the 70s, small, mobile, intelligent, agile units, like you, the management and the artist are a kind of movable unit. You're not beholden to the big companies.
Exactly. That is also why we choose to do this. Obviously, we are completely independent. We decide together with the artist, okay, what do you want? Where do you want to go? And how can we achieve that with the right partners and the right people around us? And that makes it also so attractive for us that we're not depending on big companies or corporate stuff. We just have a vision, and that is the vision we make that together with the artist, obviously. He is always in the lead, or she is always in the lead. And then we just execute that. And we select the partners that we want to do it with, and let's go.
And what about the nuts and bolts of big events? What are the most common kinds of adversity that you stumble across, like, throughout the year? Like,
I think this might be a good one for Esmée.
Yeah. On the event side, so we work, for example, with the State of Trance and AMF in the Johan Cruyff Arena, always during ADE. And we also this summer we work with the festival Panama Open Air, and it's that was an interesting festival for us, because throughout like the day of that festival, like whether like a serious storm was about to hit us, and we had 30 minutes to evacuate the whole like site, and we already were prepared for like bad weather. But when it like the Swedish House Mafia were performing, and mid-set they had to stop, and then you kind of have the PR crisis thing going on again. So festivals are so different from working with artists, because you have to deal with, you know, weather, or artists not showing up, or artists not able to be, you know, to come over, fly over. So it's such a different way of doing PR, and I think it's so important to have everything ready beforehand, communication-wise, for on the screens, socials. Artists, you know, have to be informed about, you know, what's going on and what's happening. But also other crises, like people maybe doing a drug overdose or anything else. It's such a different way of doing PR. But it's interesting, and it's also, again, working closely with the promoter, with the event organization. And we've been doing AMF now for 4 years, and it's 40,000 people in an arena, which is insane if you think about it. But it's such a good and strong team that everybody's always well prepared and knows, you know, how to deal with everything that's going on. So yeah, it's on the adversity side, it's mainly about managing the people and making sure that everybody gets home safe in the end. Like, I'm always happy when it's like end of the night, like, okay, let's go. Yeah.
It makes my head spin to think of the number of moving parts. In fact,
yes, it's wild.
I mean, you know, you are thinking on a really grand scale as well, because, you know, as soon as you mention the weather, you're thinking about, okay, the climate is changing.
Yeah.
What's happening next
Storms
year, the year
summer.
after, the year after. You know, with events of that size, you have to think about security. We've seen with Taylor Swift, you know, you have to think about terrorist threats. You know, the whole world is impacting on.
I used to work with an artist, and his security always did a round for every venue that he played for, you know, bombs and stuff. Like, I was pretty young at that time. I was like, wait, what's happening? Like, this is actually really serious. And that was a guy who did like stadium shows. So obviously, yeah, there was a time that it was really, really dangerous.
Yeah, you can
big
imagine.
shows, stadiums, yeah.
And I mean, this is the modern world. You've mentioned bots coming in on comments. You've both mentioned social media.
Yeah.
Does the industry, the game, get more complex every year, or is it just changing?
It's definitely changing, but I also feel that it's also giving us a lot. Technology, like it, Niels and also myself, we're an independent, outside party, and that's also due to that there's so much going on online, and we can do that. We don't have to be a big label or a big PR agency because there's so much information. There's so much, we can connect easily with people if we want, to connect with a certain journalist or a certain, I don't know, a brand. We can reach out directly. We don't need to go through, I don't know, Sony, Universal, Warner.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that helps a lot. It made the world faster, for sure, more effective. I think for me, it's also a positive. It has a positive side, for sure.
Yeah.
Did the COVID era? I mean, obviously, it changed everything. Did it? I guess it taught you resilience and willingness to change and willingness to adapt to all of these new landscapes.
That was a very interesting time, actually. We were at the beginning of Colin's career, but things already picked up quite a bit. So it was a very important time for him as well. And all of a sudden, the whole world closed down. I was also involved with a club called the Marktkantine in Amsterdam. And that was fully booked every weekend. But all of a sudden, everything closed down. And we started thinking, okay, what can we still do? Maybe small sit-down shows, stuff like that. So that was, it made us think in opportunities as well. But we got lucky a bit because momentum picked up for Colin quite a bit already. So certain markets were still open. In South America, they didn't care so much about COVID at that time. So we just picked out markets that were open and tried to balance that out a little bit. So for us personally, we got quite lucky that we were able to play territories that were still doing shows. But obviously, it made a big impact for everybody, and definitely venues, promoters, and also artists.
I mean, did you see any like radical changes or exciting responses during that time?
I actually quit my previous job just before COVID. Like I think 2 months or 3 months before COVID. I was like,
perfect timing.
Oh no. There we go. Me and my former boss, we parted ways, and I was like, oh, I'm now gonna, get a new job. But obviously, that's the worst timing to get a new job, right? So I actually worked on a farm, and in Friesland, where I grew up, countryside.
Amazing times. Yeah.
And it actually was really good because I was like, oh, also the industry is at a standstill. I'm at a standstill, and I've got time to think about what I want and what I want to do. And when I didn't land the job that I wanted, like that was just not possible. And that's actually why I started freelancing. So I didn't want to do that at all, actually. But one of my first clients was Romain Pisenem. He is the creative mind behind High Scream, who do all the Ushuaia stage designs and High. And I worked with him before that. And he was like, I really believe in you. Let's do something together. And then the ball just started rolling. So for me, that COVID time was actually really interesting because there was not a lot of pressure, Also, Ushuaia was closed at a certain moment. So they did, different kind of digital stuff. So there was a lot of, they needed to get, PR out about that as well. So the same for AMF, like they did a digital edition. And so for me, actually, it was a really interesting time, but also the perfect time for me to build my company, actually, which is weird if I now think about it, because a lot of people were
it makes sense, because also the amount of music that was produced in the COVID period was insane. So there was so much new music. Indeed,
yes, ambient.
So that's also I think it was also maybe even a necessary break for a lot of artists to go back into the studio, think about their musical vision, and work on a lot of music. Yeah.
And not only for, I think, the artists, also for the industry. I feel like some people obviously really had, stress and like money-wise, how should we do it and can we do it? But I think there's also a big part who kind of, slowed down on the touring side and we're like, is this really something that I want?
Absolutely.
Do I want to be on the road 24/7?
Yeah.
Or do I want to switch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've just written the story of Fabric, so their 25th birthday, written the history of the book and interviewed all of them. And for them, they'd had their crisis in 2016 when they were closed by the police, and then they were reopened with heavy conditions on their licenses and stuff. And they were just like pedaling fast to stay afloat. And then the forced break from COVID actually gave them breathing space to finally reassess and go, who are we, what are we, where do we fit into the London landscape, the arts world, all of these things. And you can't say it was good for them, because it was very, very painful for everyone, and
but it was just some sort of a reset button for a lot of clubs, festivals, and I think also artists like to
Yeah, for sure.
It was. I mean, this is the core of the topic about adversity. The English proverb is necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, I think another great example is how South African artists were exposed to the world because people were watching these Amapiano streams, right? The Major League DJs.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good example.
It's so good, actually. There's also a lot of good.
So one genre took over the world as a result of people being trapped in their houses and watching this happen. It's crazy. And it's been really good to see that people have managed to capitalise on that. Were there some lessons that you feel kind of fell by the wayside? Was there stuff that happened during that era that you kind of feel like, people forgot about how good that was, or
being at home with my cats?
Yes, winning.
That was a good time. Well,
I think really what I really liked about that time is that, and that's something that I kind of saw after like COVID kind of, not went away, but like slowed down, that there was so much more creativity for a lot of artists. They really hit the studio. They did whatever they wanted to do and not what the people wanted to hear. And I think also some artists that you work with, like they created so much. And I think that's good, really slow down and really think about what you want. And I think a lot of I work with Verknipt, which is a hard techno organization. They blew up due to actually the COVID period.
There was a whole generation waiting to start partying, and they capitalized on that. It's very nice. Yeah,
it's wild. We just did a arena show with 40,000 people again, which is hard techno, and like the average age of the visitor is like 22. Like these are people that didn't get to party until they were like 2 years ago, like 2-3 years ago. Like it's 2 years ago, I think. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see. I think Verknipt is like doing a great job and they're expanding and taking over the world. So it's fun to work with them as well because they're a new brand and there's so much on a PR front that you can also do with that. And there's a story like that, Yeah.
What about the grassroots? I mean, in the UK, we have our own problems with 14 years of government that didn't invest in culture and coming out of Europe and losing a lot of connections and stuff. But there's a received opinion certainly that grassroots clubbing never quite recovered from COVID, and that the young generation only go to the big festivals now, only go to the big venues. I mean, how's that situation for you, from you guys' point of view?
Well, I've been going to clubs in Amsterdam and like Trouw, for an example. That is where my true passion for electronic music initiated. So I strongly believe in club culture, but the trend is that people go to festivals more, bigger shows, and I see that they tune in a little bit less, like long club sets. Take the time for that. Don't want like immediately hands in the air, but take their time on the dance floor to really get into it. That is a trend that I see, and I hope that we are able to bring club culture, a little bit back, actually.
Yeah, I think that's where the technology comes in, right? Like phones on the dance floor, short attention span, younger crowd. I also love those days when you just went clubbing for hours and you just put your phone in your pocket and I feel very old saying this, but it's like, those were the times, same, like Trouw and like, oh man, that was really good. But now it's also social media. Sorry, it sounds so weird, but it really changed the game for sometimes the good, but also sometimes for the, not so good. Like
because this does have the potential to cause underlying problems if there isn't the breeding ground for young artists to come through. If they're expected to jump in at a certain level, you don't have resilience within the industry, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's super important to have a breeding ground for young talent. This is also the way that all my artists started. All artists started absolutely zero. And it's also a nice motivation for young talent that sometimes they think, oh, wow, I need to already produce amazing music or whatever. But all the artists started in a small cellar. With speakers, that was it. Yeah,
and it's so funny because what I always see is that like most of the artists always have like their icons or their idols, and then at a certain moment they meet them. I know for we also work with Chad, like this really good new refreshing kind of DJ here in Amsterdam, and he just did like a radio show for 538, a Dutch radio station, and Armin van Buuren is hosting that show, and it's like, oh, I started my career because and due to Armin, or he was like one of the guys that I really looked up to. And that's like something that I think is interesting. Like everybody started somewhere. I think Armin probably also had his like icons and
for
idols.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's nice about this industry, that it's actually fairly small.
Yeah. I also really like that about the industry, that when I see young talents meeting one of our bigger artists, there's always a connection, because my artists see in their eyes, okay, man, I've been where you are at the moment, and sharing some tips or insights. I really like that as well.
That's one of the things that did happen in the COVID. I'm answering my own question now, actually, because one of the lessons that for some people got lost, that when there wasn't a lot of touring, a lot of bigger artists said, oh, my heart is in the smaller clubs, it's where I come from. And they were going back and doing the small club gigs and helping support some small promoters and local scenes and stuff. Some are still doing great things with that. You look at someone like Scream, he will just go to the smallest town and he knows the people there and he befriends everyone and he's part of, does those small gigs. Other people, they went back into their private jets.
I think that's also something just speaking from the PR point of view. Like sometimes artists want to be those big, big shot DJs that are on the cover of magazine X, Y, and Z. And other DJs are like, I'm fine with doing just 1, 2, or 3 interviews throughout the year because I want to speak about the passion that I have for music, but I want to do like the underground stuff. I just don't want to do but sometimes building a profile, you need to be visible. You need, so that's always a discussion that we have with like, what is it that we want? What's the strategy behind it? Do we want to make you not make you, but do we want to go for being this very prominent artist in the industry, or do we want you to be more on the underground side and you want to play like the underground smaller clubs, and that's where we also connect with the managers. Like, what is it that we want? Like, what are the goals?
I think a combination works well. And for an example, Colin, he is still very passionate about playing small clubs. So we selected maybe 10 venues around the world that we are just very passionate to play. And that can be super small venues. We accept lower fees there as well, just to...
They could be the best clubs in the world.
100%. And we also look at it like that.
Yeah. I guess what it comes down to is that we need to show people that adversity doesn't necessarily mean doing fewer gigs, doing smaller gigs. Social media tells people that it's the accoutrements, it's like bang, 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 the fast lifestyle, the most, the biggest. Whereas what seasoned DJs know is that your roots are in those small places and are in the...
Absolutely.
What might be tiring schedules, not having the deluxe lift from the airport, whatever it might be. You might have to get the train, whatever. But that kind of adversity actually comes with more reward sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. If you're in it for the music, then definitely. If you're in it for, the business side of things, you probably want to get that deluxe car from the airport. Yeah, it's just everybody's different. Some people are not the best producers, although the audience thinks that they're really good producers. Like, they're really good business people, and some artists are really good at making music and playing gigs and building up, a set. So, that's also where I always try to kind of check in with a new client. Like, what is it that they're doing? What is it that we can work with? And if you want to be in this industry for a long time, I think it has to be about, the passion you have for music. Otherwise, you will burn and crash within a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground, actually. I think we have some wisdom for the people out there.
Well, I don't know about that.
I hope.
So, thank you so much, guys. I've learned a lot, and it's been really great meeting you and finding out about all of this. So, really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.